The federal government has revealed its signature Housing Australia Future Fund has delivered 340 new homes and has more than 5,000 under construction in its first round.
For 2 decades, Australia has been in the grip of a housing shortage, with eye-watering prices pushing home ownership out of reach. So wasn't this welcome news late last month?
It aims to build 30,000 over the next 5 years.
Yes, new homes as far as the eye can see. The Housing Australia Future Fund's singular achievement reverberated across the ABC's huge national footprint, featuring on its flagship radio current affairs program.
Today it's revealed that so far 340 homes have been built under the fund's first round.
And repeated throughout the morning.
Minister for Social Services Amanda Ishworth says so far 340 new homes have been built.
So far 340 new homes have been built.
The story was first reported by The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald online the night before and appeared as a page 4 exclusive in The Age the next day.
Thousands of homes built by Labor Fund.
In Perth, 221 have been built in outer suburbs.
With The Age teasing just how far it was ahead of its competition.
Figures from the fund to be released today will show 358 homes have been completed.
At a Senate estimates hearing that day, Nine Scoop took centre stage.
Apparently, according to the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age today, the Housing Australia Future Fund has now built 300 houses.
340 homes are complete, and as these have been acquired and converted into social and affordable housing.
Acquired and converted? What does that mean? Coalition attack dog Andrew Bragg, he wanted to know too.
How many of them were actually built?
They've all been built.
Oh, so 340 you said were acquired. Were they acquired or were they built? It's a different thing.
Well, they all had to be built to be acquired.
Uh-oh. The fund might have signed deals to build a slew of new homes. 5,000 might even be under construction. But as best we can determine, it seems there's not yet a single new home to have come out of the ground, which might help explain why The Age had put it like this. The ABC's Running Politics blog appears to have been first to identify the distinction, and by the next morning, the story had turned on its head, with Sally Sara interviewing Andrew Bragg on Radio National Breakfast.
You say that you've caught the government fudging the numbers on HAF. What do you mean?
Well, the government claimed that they'd built 300 houses, but in fact we found out in Senate estimates yesterday that those 300 houses have been purchased, not built.
Undeterred, Nine loved its exclusive so much it ran it again, word for word, under a new headline in the Sydney Morning Herald the next day. It took more than 72 hours for Nine to notice the footings had begun to slip.
Clarification.
This article and its headline have been updated to better reflect the debate about the progress of the Housing Australia Future Fund's work.
And what were these updates? Well, this headline for starters, and those 221 homes in Perth were no longer built, they were completed. Then last Friday, after our inquiries, the vague clarification became something a little more concrete.
Correction.
An earlier version of this story said 221 houses in Perth were built by the Housing Australia Future Fund. However, these houses were purchased and restored.
Nine's Luke McElveen told Media Watch,
"The story should have made clear what completed means and should not have used the word built to describe houses bought and restored. This was an error."
The ABC has also now published an editor's note and a clarification. This was a wee glimpse of the dark arts deployed on all sides, almost every day in Canberra. The government planted a story in Nine newspapers that I'm sure it hoped would be misreported, and wheeled out Amanda Ishworth for a critical ABC radio interview to make sure Auntie spread it far and wide. Of course, the moral of this little fable will be obvious to you all. Journalists hungry for an exclusive must turn a somewhat more jaundiced eye to politicians bearing gifts. Now, to the subtle art of diplomacy, as practised by America's least subtle man.
Playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
It was the moment that knocked the world off its axis.
I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States.
You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine?
The leaders of the free world castigating their ally, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, ensuring his humiliation was broadcast to billions of people around the world, then casting him from Washington.
He can come back when he is ready for peace.
The aftershocks ran to the furthest reaches of the planet. Here at home, one prominent columnist put into words what many dared not imagine.
It's clear that Trump is an agent of Putin. All US allies should be alarmed.
Some saw the Oval Office reception for Ukraine's wartime leader as carefully choreographed theatre for a White House press pack being moulded by Donald Trump to his better liking.
So what gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy.
That softball question was tossed to Trump by conservative network One America News, just one of a growing suite of right-wing outlets and reporters basking beside the seat of power. Another was Brian Glenn, who had been given special access to the press pool that day.
You think ultimately your legacy will be the peacemaker and not the president that led this country into another war?
Thank you, Brian, for that question. It was a nice question.
Yes, thank you, Brian. He was so nice, in fact, that Trump granted him another shot, which this time he directed to Zelensky.
Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest. Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if you own a suit?
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something
like yours. Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better.
Brian Glenn is the chief White House correspondent for Real America's Voice, a right-wing channel known for pumping up Trump and promoting conspiracy theories.
This is another threat from the deep state against Donald Trump so that he doesn't expose pedophiles.
And making room for a television program hosted by right-wing provocateur and convicted criminal Steve Bannon.
Donald Trump and his revolution is in charge now. And yes, we're going to burn some of these institutions down to the ground, metaphorically.
Brian Glenn is also a loving boyfriend to Marjorie Taylor Greene, that charming US politician best known for promoting claims Sandy Hook was staged and that space lasers might have been setting off bushfires. With Trump busy fending off a ferocious American press and cutting his allies' negotiating position to ribbons, the US president could perhaps be excused for failing to notice someone had snuck into the room, an unaccredited foreign correspondent from Russian state media TASS.
A Reuters reporter saw some White House officials check reporter identities and allow the TASS reporter to walk in before the Trump-Zelensky meeting began.
Of course, the White House would not say how we got in there in the first place. Having taken an axe to America's institutions of government and its international standing, mind you, Trump now wants to ensure the story of his administration gets painted in all the right colours.
For decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore.
No. The White House was seizing control instead. Legacy mastheads might still enjoy the privilege of hearing him speak.
But we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility.
So while Real America's Voice and, briefly, Moscow's TASS were in the room for the Zelensky show trial, absent was the White House reporter from Associated Press, the 179-year-old globally respected independent newswire, which Trump now quite dislikes.
AP has been terrible. Look, I think they're radical left. I think they're third rate.
Because it has declined to genuflect to Trump's demand that it rename the Gulf of Mexico. AP is now suing the government to to restore its full access to presidential events, while other established media organisations have discovered they've been barred too, such as when Donald Trump held his first cabinet meeting.
Trump White House boots Reuters and HuffPost from press pool, blocks coverage of cabinet meeting.
That day there were some new faces in the room, like conservative outlets Newsmax and The Blaze. The White House Correspondents Association sees the move as an attack on democracy.
In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps.
In the 7 weeks since his inauguration, Donald Trump's bluster has shaken not just the United States, but a global order built from the ashes of World War II. But the story of his chaotic administration and who gets to tell it has thus far remained beyond his control. There are 191 weeks to go, however, before the next presidential election. And that is a very long time for a free press under enormous pressure.
Latest forecast now puts the Gold Coast directly in the firing line of Alfred's fury, with the storm predicted to make landfall as early as tomorrow night.
Hello, I'm Linton Besser. Welcome to Media Watch. And there was only one story last week, Cyclone Alfred, as it bore down on Australia's east coast.
The early hours of Friday morning, I could very well be standing in knee-deep water here in Currumbin, and low-lying areas down further on the beach could very well break their bank.
Alfred had come to wreak havoc on homes and businesses across southern Queensland and northern New South Wales. And the media responded, rallying troops to almost every corner possible. Politicians filled sandbags and SES workers issued grave warnings, which reporters took to heart, donning their anoraks and getting amongst it.
But you really do have to marvel at Mother Nature in times like this.
The ABC's Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast Bureau were relocated as Auntie ditched the drama and swung into emergency broadcasting, while Channel 7 turned its office into a bunker.
So we're going to just get on these camp beds tonight.
As did Gold Coast radio station Hot Tomato. Only problem, the guest of honour was delayed.
Breaking news, Cyclone Alfred is slowing.
It has slowed to a snail's pace. Cyclone Alfred, 7 kilometres an hour.
By the time Alfred knocked on the door, he was no longer a Category 2 cyclone, but a tropical low. And after he swept in, some locals were nonplussed.
We were waiting for it to happen. We just fell asleep. There was a bit of wind happening, but not as much as what I was expecting.
It was scary. We just sat at home, drank like 10 billion beers, so...
Alfred may not have been Tracy, but the media brought what destruction there was into living rooms everywhere.
Tree after tree toppled like toothpicks.
Nadine Hartwig lost the lot.
With gravitas.
In Dorrigo, tributes flowed for local man Tommy Cook, who drowned in flood waters on Friday afternoon.
It was definitely a larrikin.
And with warmth.
For a storm, was it a bit scary or was it okay?
It was fine, it was fine, it was fine. Other than our blackout, it's been pretty fun. Yeah, I don't like the blackout.
At times, rousing on ne'er-do-wells.
Guys, what were you thinking? Why did you jump in?
To swim a little bit.
And at others, putting down the camera to render first aid.
This crash was actually photographed by a Sydney Morning Herald photographer, Nick Moyer, who came across it as he was reporting in the floods himself.
It was pretty hectic. The first, 10 minutes, it was just triaging who had what sort of injuries.
It's in touchstone moments like these when commercial networks in particular seek to make their mark and earn their keep. As it turned out, this landmark news event, despite the ongoing threat of flooding, never did quite come. But authorities had warned this was a moment of great peril for millions of people. So to see even in straitened times, newsrooms devote such resources to what could have been a catastrophe was a heartwarming reminder of the media at its best. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on iView as well as X, YouTube and Facebook. You can find full statements on our website. And don't forget to send us your tips. See you next week.